Let's move on now to the Los Angeles Rams. The Super Bowl champions, their projection this year is over under 10.5 games. Let's run through the same stats I talked about before. Von Miller is gone. Odell Beckham is gone. Andrew Whitworth is gone. Basically, their whole defensive line besides Aaron Donald is gone. Sony Michel gone. Robert Woods gone. Troy Reader gone. They lose 3 offensive line starters, but it's not all bad news with the Rams. They bring in Allen Robinson, a former superstar quarterback, or former superstar wide receiver. They bring in Bobby Wagner, the former franchise linebacker for the Seattle Seahawks. They bring in Troy Hill at corner. And as we all know, this is a team that has really gone all in on these undervalued veterans. So Allen Robinson and Bobby Wagner, they really fit the bill of what this team's been trying to build over the last several years. They didn't have a draft pick until the 3rd round. They used it on an offensive guard, Logan Bruss from Wisconsin. So this is a team that is relying on this stars and studs mantra that some people who play fantasy football, if you do auction, you may be using this in your own team. And we're sort of seeing this now used at the highest level of football, which is interesting to see, but it does bring to mind what the worst case scenario of that roster construction ideology can result in sometimes. And usually we'll see that with if a player gets hurt, you don't have that depth, you don't have that youth to have a really usable guy step in and step up and not miss a beat. So with the way this Rams roster has been constructed, I'm a little bit worried about depth. What I love about this Rams team is the fact that they're bringing back Raheem Morris, the defensive coordinator. Raheem Morris is a very, very well-versed head coach, or former head coach in the NFL. He's popped around the league for years, and he did a phenomenal job with this defense. I think that I was a little bit surprised that he didn't actually see more head coaching opportunities open up for him last year after the Rams Super Bowl. But I'm pretty high on Raheem Morris's ability to make use of the stars this Rams defense brings back in terms of Aaron Donald, the generational defensive talent, Jalen Ramsey. And I think that Bobby Wagner automatically slots into the best inside linebacker the Rams have had maybe since they moved to LA. I think definitely since they moved to LA, even if that guy has lost a step. I'm a little less high on Allen Robinson. I went back and watched a lot of the tape on Allen Robinson. I know people seem to think that he made a conscious effort to quit on his team last year, and I sort of saw that, but I don't really like that in my players. I'm not high on guys who quit on their teams typically, unless you're Randy Moss, who was able to do it and then catch 23 touchdowns the next year. But look at a guy like Kenny Golladay. Kenny Golladay was really hot dogging it at the end of his time with the Lions, and ultimately he ends up sucking when he goes to a new team the next year when he cashes in that big payday. I think that despite all my concerns about the depth with the Rams and my concerns about Allen Robinson maybe slotting in there to replace Odell Beckham, what I like is that they have guys like Van Jefferson who should be able to step in and continue to grow and develop as receivers. I think Van Jefferson was a really strong young player last year, and I'm excited to see what he does in taking the next step as a receiver. On top of all this, I just am really high on what Sean McVay and Matt Stafford seem to build over the course of last season. Stafford is who he is at this point of his career. He's a freakish talent. He loves to push the ball downfield, and I think that ability to push the ball downfield really opens up a lot of options, really expands the menu for Sean McVay in terms of what he can do in getting creative on offense. Now, we all hype Sean McVay up as this offensive guru, but this is the same guy who in the Super Bowl was just running the ball over and over and over again with a running back who was averaging 2.5 yards per carry. So for all his creativity, even the immortal and iconic Sean McVay has his own flaws. But nonetheless, I am buying the Rams to come back from a Super Bowl win and maybe establish themselves as the class of the NFC this year. They have the stars. They have the Super Bowl title now. I think they're going to go on an ass-kicking tour and hit that over 10.5 win total. I think they could be the number 1 seed in the NFC. I'm looking around this conference, and I don't see a team that I'm higher on than the Rams if all things break right. So let's briefly talk a little bit about props for this team. I just have one prop that really sort of expands into a few others, and that's Cam Akers under all his unders. Every under you can get on Cam Akers, I'm high on it. Why? Why am I high on this amazing story, this great story of a guy who came back from an almost impossible injury to come back to? He played in the Super Bowl. He wasn't very good, but he showed a little life before that. I think Cam Akers is a guy who dealt with injuries prior to this Achilles tear. And on top of that, it's not fun to bet against a cool story, right? It's not fun to bet the under on a guy who has this sort of coming back from an impossible injury story. But you know what is fun? Making money. Making money is fun. So I'm betting against the guy with a previously debilitating injury for running backs. Even D'Onta Foreman, who's a guy who had that Achilles tear previously, it took him a few years. He was almost out of the league before he got another opportunity to come back from that Achilles tear, because it's such a devastating injury for these running backs' ability to cut, ability to get upfield with purpose. I'm all in on betting Cam Akers unders this year. Under his projected 8.5 total touchdowns, rushing touchdowns, under his projected 950.5 rushing yards. That's where I lie on this. I don't see how you can confidently bet either of those unless you're just purely writing some NFL, Disney story, feel-good movie. But as anyone who bets on football knows, those stories don't exist when it comes to betting on the NFL. There are no happy endings, and most of the time, this is just all bad news. So be smart. Don't let the books talk you into this feel-good story, and bet all the unders on Cam Akers ahead of the season.